Hello, everybody. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of the Rush Hour podcast. We have a pretty juicy conversation to get to today following the court documents released between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively. They've got these pre-trial documents that have been going back and forth. Some might read them as very hypocritical, as Blake Lively's side is trying to get a gag order, a protective order against Justin Baldoni so that he doesn't share the evidence against her in their upcoming court battle. Well, since the court date is set for over a year from now, I think their plan is to let the public know, hey, here's what we got. This is what we'll be sharing. This is just what happened. Of course, this coming after Blake Lively colluded with the New York Times to get her side out there with her evidence. So the question is, will this evidence by Justin Baldoni be exposed today or this weekend before the Monday court hearing? Maybe they say, well, on Monday, the judge might decide we're not allowed to talk at all. So let's just talk this weekend, get that genie out of the bottle. I don't have answers to that, but I think it's a very good question to ask. What we're going to do right now is jump into several of the court documents. There's, I don't know, a good handful of them. Some have more meat than others. One document shows that Blake is claiming Justin not only was harassing her, but there were other complaints by other actors and crew on set. Interesting stuff. I want to give a quick shout out to my friend Lauren here, who on her YouTube goes by @LethalLauren904, and she's covering this case as well and covered it last night and also helped me get some of these documents. So much appreciation to Lauren. Go follow her. She's a psych evaluator, so she always has a good nuanced take on this case. And by the way, just so folks know, I'll get it wrong. I'm not perfect. You know, some people have said, oh, you missed this or you missed that. I don't have a team. I'm not Candace Owens. It's just me. I'm a dad of an 8-month-old. So I'm in here making videos. I'm running out there feeding babies. Like I'm trying my best. I say that because this is what's going to happen. The channel's blown up the last week or two. We will be held to a standard I will just not be able to meet, by some people. So I'm asking for grace from those involved, and I'm also asking for grace for myself that we're going to try our best, and I think that's pretty good enough. So anyway, let's get into it. First here, the initial pretrial conference was supposed to be February 12th. It has been rescheduled to February 3rd, which is Monday. And you might say, boy, I hate Mondays. Going to work sucks. Yes, it does. But trust me, we'll be here bushy-eyed and ready to go. Is that a term? To get this information. We'll either find out if the judge accepts her protective order request to essentially gag Justin Baldoni, or if the judge will shut that down. That is at 11 a.m. in the Pearl Street Courthouse. I think it's open to anybody if anyone wants to go. The parties shall be prepared to address the letter motion regarding pretrial publicity and attorney conduct. Blake Lively's side is accusing, in part, Justin Baldoni's attorney of defaming her, and we'll get into that in a second. So there it is. That's where they'll be, and so yesterday was January 30th. The parties submit a case management plan with deadlines, which should enable trial to occur on that date. So there's the order signed by the judge Louis Lyman, and we'll have a few of these different updates. So again, there's a lot of redundancy in some of this paperwork that we can kind of just like bulldoze through. Here it says, this is from Blake's side, during a January 21st, 2025 telephone call, we attempted to confer in good faith with counsel. This is from Justin's side. We attempted to confer in good faith with counsel for the Lively parties about an extension of time until March 20th, 2025, the same deadline that the Lively parties enjoy in the Wayfarer case. All right, so there's multiple cases, right? She's suing him, he's suing her, and they're saying, we need more time. Justin's side wants more time, and specifically for very good reason. This isn't one of those my dog ate my homework things. The Wayfarer parties to respond to the complaint in the Lively case, specifically, we noted that such extension of time was appropriate because the two cases are designated as related and likely will be consolidated pursuant to Rule 42A. And two, the Wayfarer party's lead counsel, Brian Friedman, lost his home in the recent wildfires in Los Angeles and need additional time to coordinate responses to the complaint in the Lively case. So it's not yet consolidated, but it's pretty much assumed that her lawsuit against him, his against her, probably not involving the New York Times one, but his against her or hers against him will be turned into one mega lawsuit. It'll be a giant lawsuit, a marathon of lawsuits, as they're going to be presenting the same evidence against each other. And, that'll just, clear things up a little bit. In an email delivered earlier today, the Lively Parties Counsel refused to consent to an extension of time, contending that the cases are not yet consolidated. The Lively parties intend to move to dismiss the Wayfair case, and counsel requested that the Wayfair parties waive service, but no waiver was executed. So, yeah, of course, Lively's not going to want to get sued. If Ryan Reynolds sued me, I would motion to dismiss that lawsuit too. I would love to motion to dismiss all of the negative comments I get from this. I would love to motion to dismiss my DMs from people that aren't anything but happy. Oh, Dave, you want to live in an echo chamber? Yes, I do. I would like an echo chamber. The world is mean enough. I don't need any extra people involved. All right, so either way, the Wayfair parties respectfully request an extension of time until March 20th to respond to the complaint in the Lively case. No date has yet been set for the parties' next appearance. This was from January 22nd. Again, I don't know if this means the judge denied this request or if that's still ongoing, but it's not a good look for the public perception that Blake Lively's lawyer doesn't want to give an extension to Brian Friedman, whose home was burnt down in a devastating wildfire. Again, not really important for the case, but what it does go to show is the gloves are off, both legally and between Blake and Justin here. So we continue. In response on Saturday, January 25th, in direct response to filings from Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds parties to this court regarding Mr. Friedman's recent prejudicial, extrajudicial behavior, Mr. Friedman issued additional inflammatory content to tabloid media outlets. So Blake Lively's side is calling pretty much all of us tabloid media. No, but Daily Mail, and I understand it's media, but they're trying to sort of denigrate it and call it tabloid media. And it's like, look, I'm sure he would have shared it with the New York Times, but I'm sure they weren't going to post it, So this is almost like it kind of like is almost a class system here where Blake Lively coordinates with the New York Times. No one called them tabloid media. You might call them fake news. I don't really like that fake news. I like to look at media on a case-by-case example. But if you have multiple cases where you're disingenuous, that's on the reader to decide if there's any authenticity left or any fabric of journalistic integrity. I think we have that. I'm trying my best. Not perfect, but someone who's not a journalist, I think they make it so easy to run circles around them because we will look at both sides. We can have our opinion. It's a tight needle to thread, but I will look at both sides and then I'll share my opinion. You can have both of those. And guess what? You're entitled to your opinion. And by the way, check out my Instagram if you haven't already, because this is where I'll be posting lots of updates and things like that. We're not quite at 100,000 subscribers there, but we do have a bunch of people. I've started to get comments from people pushing back at my objectivity here. Everyone's allowed their opinion. I just want everyone to be operating in good faith. Do you really think I'm getting this wrong? And if so, why are you consuming my content? My fact checkers are you guys. So if I get something wrong, or if I'm a little slanted with my coverage, or if something's going on, I do check in on you guys and see if I'm heading in that direction. I've been very aware of my own blind spots as a man to say, okay, there is no perfect victim. Let's really give Blake the benefit of the doubt, to the point in which people have gotten mad at me because they think that I'm like not giving justice to Justin. And it's like, look, I think in the end, the evidence swings his way right now, but because I'm aware of those that will accuse me of the things like you have an opinion on stuff like this, you get labeled a men's rights activist. This is the world we live in. And I would prefer to take every measure possible so that when someone does label me a certain way, 1,000 people in the comment section say, you got Dave wrong. That's not what's happening. So help me out. Give me a follow on Instagram at dnealz, DNEALZ. So let's continue with what we got here. The Lively parties falsely engineered an extension of time until March 20th is the allegation. to respond to the complaint in the Wayfair case, but now refused to consent to the same deadline for the Wayfair parties, even though doing is in the interest of justice and efficiency in cases that are not only related, but likely to be consolidated. For these reasons, the Wayfair parties respectfully request an extension of time until March 20th to respond to the complaint in the Lively case. So the accusations, engineering, they falsely engineered, so these sort of like legal blows that they're going to be giving each other are only beginning. Let's go to this court document. We write on behalf of Plaintiff Blake Lively in the Lively case and defendants Blake and Ryan in the Wayfair case, together the Lively Reynolds parties, to bring to the court's attention Mr. Brian Friedman's continued extrajudicial misconduct and to request a conference at the court's earliest convenience. So that's what's going to happen Monday. They're going to do this conference. In direct response to filing from the Lively Reynolds parties to this court regarding Mr. Friedman's recent prejudicial extrajudicial behavior, Mr. Friedman issued additional inflammatory content to tabloid media, as we mentioned. Those statements include that Miss Lively filed her California Civil Rights Department complaint, which was reported by the New York Times with the sole intent to ruin the lives of innocent individuals, and then went the extra mile to place blame on a fictitious smear campaign. Miss Lively's sexual harassment and retaliation complaint has devastated the entirety of the DV community. Mr. Friedman also falsely asserted that the Lively Reynolds parties had raised concerns about his unethical and unprofessional behavior only because Miss Lively is fearful of the truth. All right, so Justin Baldoni's lawyers are saying she doesn't want this information out because she's afraid of the truth. And everyone kind of has that opinion. Because if the information helps your side, you wouldn't care. Mr. Friedman made it apparent he is engaged in this extrajudicial campaign, which again means outside the courtroom, to influence these proceedings in the public perception of legal filings to the court. And there already is a serious risk that his misconduct is tainting the jury pool. He further has made it clear that his priority is to torpedo Blake Lively's career for good, by, among other things, creating a website to release strategically selected documents and communications between Miss Lively and Mr. Baldoni. So if you're Blake Lively's side, you must wake up every morning with your fingers crossed, wondering if this website's going to come out. And maybe the website comes out or maybe it doesn't, but obviously Justin Baldoni's lawyer, Brian Friedman, has dribbled, and I'm sure he's doing it with Justin's consent, right? You can't do these things without your client's consent. He's dribbled the evidence out, the voice note, the dancing scene, the 10 minutes of unedited footage. So the information he's getting out there, it's like, will he do it in a way that's a cohesive multimedia timeline, which if he does, will break the internet. It'll break the internet. It'll be absolutely wild. But then people can decide for themselves, and then others online can't accuse me of, I don't know, crazy things about being on one side versus the other. This is so fair. I knew this would happen coming into it, and we haven't even begun to see the bandwidth from people that think that my coverage of a unique celebrity case is in any way against victims out there. Couldn't be further from the case. As you guys know, I've got an audience of primarily 95% women, and I care so very much that victims' stories are heard. I object to any sort of summary of my intent otherwise, right? I object to that, and I'll be happy to share those receipts. Happy to. Mr. Friedman's most recent statements, which are designed to leverage non-judicial channels, again, mine, but I haven't been in coordination with anyone from their campaign, but I'm sure Popcorn, Popcorn Planet, obviously Daily Mail, yeah, sure, they're I would consider non-judicial channels. I think that they're not judges, right? So either way, his repeated media attacks of a victim of sexual harassment engaging in a protected activity in his weaponization of media outlets to broadly disseminate these false, defamatory, and misleading statements have the potential to prejudice a jury pool beyond repair. Yeah, I mean, that might be true, but weren't they prejudiced beyond repair after the New York Times article? Do you know what I mean? So they say, we regret it's necessary to address they say Miss Friedman's, I think they mean Mr. Friedman's, typo, misleading efforts to spin Miss Lively's present request that Mr. Friedman and his partners follow the rules of professional conduct as a request to gag the Wayfair parties because Miss Lively is petrified of the evidence. That claim is designed to impugn Miss Lively's character and thus is yet another violation of Rule 3.6. What is more, Mr. Friedman's accusation is incoherent. Miss Lively initiated her lawsuit intending that the evidence related to this case will come to light through discovery, knowing that the Wayfair parties would have every opportunity not just to seek discovery from her, but also to defend themselves with any and all text messages. So again, respectfully, how is she allowed to share their evidence of private texts between Baldoni and his team, but he can't respond with evidence of what happened during their workday or what happened during the planning of their video and planning of the movie? And how disingenuous some of the media is to say, oh, Justin was talking about Blake's boob at 2 a.m. Well, it was a conversation about breastfeeding, right? And we don't know what conversations led up to that. So either way, so disingenuous. And again, that's why people have a problem with this case right now. The endless stream of defamatory media statements must end. It will not stop without the court's intervention. The Wayfair defendants' efforts are being financed by a billionaire who has pledged to spend $100 million to ruin the lives of Miss Lively and her family. And also, Ryan Reynolds is worth upwards of $1 billion. He sold his liquor company for $600 million. His Mint Mobile's worth $400 million. He's been in all these movies with equity. I don't have the numbers straight. I'm just saying it could be that Ryan Reynolds long-term is worth way more than their side. So it continues. This is a 38-page document that I'm not going to read the full thing, but this is a document on behalf of Blake Lively. And this is them writing to the judge making claims, some of which I'm not sure we've heard before. Listen to this. Your actions against our client were and are unlawful. As your own communications prove, when you launched the campaign described above, you were aware that Miss Lively and other members of the cast and crew had raised complaints of sexual harassment, a hostile environment, and or other unwelcome behavior by Mr. Baldoni. Indeed, as you likely know, Miss Nathan and Miss Abel bragging in writing contemporaneous text messages, to be precise, about having killed stories that would have accurately reported on those complaints. Further, you knew... Okay, so my question is this. Here's my question I would ask as a journalist. The PR companies killed stories about sexual harassment complaints. That doesn't mean the sexual harassment complaints were true. I need to see the actual sexual harassment complaints to weigh in on my opinion about whether they're valid or not. The only thing I can weigh on right now is the fact that Blake Lively's side has mischaracterized evidence, edited text messages, and not been forthcoming with all of the facts, saying that Justin sharing pornography with her couldn't be further from the truth. So when I hear these things, I no longer have trust that what they're saying is true. Early on, for them to say, hey, there's other complaints, I would say, okay, well, let's see what those have to say. If there are complaints from Blake Lively and or not even from other people, but if there are any from her during the time period when this would have happened that can show timestamps, that's a different story than rewriting this months later with the belief that maybe it'll help you get rights to the film. Completely different story. So this is very interesting. So to the extent you have not recently reviewed the reasonable but also essential provisions of that protections for return to production document to which Wayfair agreed, including its robust anti-retaliation provision, you may wish to refamiliarize yourself with that document before you take any additional actions that will result in further liability for you and your associates. So this is what's so crazy, right? In order for Blake to come back to set after the writer's strike, they have Justin Baldoni sign under duress, really, protections for return to production, in which they include no retaliation. So even if he doesn't agree with her characterization of events, the movie gets real flatlined, killed, because she doesn't return. They'd have to reshoot the whole thing. Or they sign it, and now they're not allowed to talk. I mean, they really have their hands tied behind their backs. So they continue going... and, talking to the judge about these same complaints about, the fact that he's making these statements. His will to sue individuals into oblivion will shock everyone who has been manipulated into believing a demonstrably false narrative is nothing other than publicity purposely initiated by the lawyer or the lawyer's client to perpetuate a public narrative of Mr. Friedman's or his client's own creation. Now, don't get me wrong. Brian Friedman is like the Don King of lawyers right now. Don King was a promoter for boxing who would, big flair, and he would get people, he would get butts in seats, right? That's what Brian Friedman is trying to do. He's the sort of ringleader who comes to town with his circus. Hear ye, tonight you'll see the greatest, show on whatever. That's what Brian's saying. I'm okay with it as long as he delivers, right? If Brian Friedman doesn't have the evidence to back up his claims, he loses credibility. And to be quite honest, I don't know the names of her attorneys, but I know the name of his because he's got a well-known reputation around town, especially helping victims. Like, it's not like Brian Friedman, don't get me wrong, every lawyer's got cases where they probably represent a scumbag, but the only cases I know are when he represented female victims. Gabrielle Union against America's Got Talent, and Cassie Randolph against The Bachelor, Colton Underwood. So I'm sure there's other instances there, but if he doesn't, why would he sink his teeth into a case? And this is kind of what I hold on to. Why would he sink his teeth into a case that could take years and he not get paid? Maybe his client would pay him regardless, but it would not be good for future work opportunities, right? So he's already rich. I don't think it's about the money here. I think it's about, we believe we can unearth a wild conspiracy. And Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, they are a big sort of giant here to try to take down. I'll end on this part because we've gone long enough. So this is Brian Friedman's response to a lot of these claims that we just shared. We regret that it is necessary to address... Oh, hold on. I have the wrong one. We regret when the Wayfair parties consented to jurisdiction in the court, including by filing their own affirmative claims. They agreed to this dispute would be resolved under the federal rules of civil procedure and applicable rules of professional conduct. Those rules are crystal clear. Once a party is in litigation in a pending matter, it is unethical and improper for an attorney to use the press to attack the character of an opposing party or witness. Now, what we've seen from lawyers on TikTok is when lawyers say unethical, it means it's not illegal. So it might be unethical for him to take this to the court of public opinion, but his response, which you can read through these documents, has been, you guys fired the first shot publicly. And they'll claim, no, you did because you had the crisis PR that weaponized this smear campaign against Blake Lively. Now, my question to audiences out there is, are you willing to, take everything that's been said with a grain of salt? Understand that maybe there were smear campaigns. Maybe it was just public opinion of Blake. Are you willing to put that aside and not be tainted as a viewer and take the facts as they are? It's tough, right? We generally, what do they say? A lie travels twice around the world before the truth wakes up. I butchered that saying, but you understand what I'm saying here, is that it can be very tough to learn the truth when you first have been implanted with the lie. And I have to keep that for my own blind spots and wonder, and seriously wonder, what does Blake have any evidence that shows she was sexually harassed? She may very well have been, but in the court of law, you have to provide evidence to prove those claims. Otherwise, anybody could claim anything and get somebody else fired or canceled or whatever. And that, but I understand if there's somebody who doesn't have any smoking guns about them, but they're an absolute creep. And there's multiple stories. And you just know when you go in there, he's going to get you in the steam room. Like, there are stories like that in Hollywood where no one's been charged with the crime. People talk. I don't see any examples of people talking about Justin Baldoni. In a general world, if you have some blue-collar job as an electrician, people might not talk. They might not want to deal with nonsense like this. But every single time when somebody is a bad guy and has crossed a line and done bad things multiple times, for the most part, you see instances where it's repeatable. Victim stories are generally the same or have the same themes of power and control. You see Weinstein, everyone's got the same story. He brought me up into his office. The assistants went away. He said, quid pro quo, do this and you'll get that. We have not got a shred of that evidence yet. If it's out there and we see it, I'll change my opinion. That's fine. I'm just asking this of my audience. And the majority of you guys have been on the side of understanding how tight this needle is to thread. But I'm asking those that haven't understood that. Please give me a shot and give me a little slack here, because it's tough to cover this. And if I'm able to do anything with my channel, it's give you as much facts, share my opinion, and leave room for you to have yours. Let's not attach opinions to people who have been accused of the crimes, right? That's what we see a lot of. It's like, oh, if I agree or if I think something's not so bad, it's like, I didn't pull the trigger. I'm not Luigi. What do you want from me? Do I think healthcare is messed up and it's a terrible system and I'm not surprised when something like that happens? Absolutely. I didn't pull the trigger, and the same goes true here. I wasn't on the set. I'm just doing my best. Why do I feel the need to further explain myself? Because I'm getting ahead of what will become a situation where pro-Justin accounts will be put on lists. This is going to happen. It's the easiest and most simple smear tactic in the book, and people will there'll be people trying to silence those that have a straight up opinion. And I reject that. I will fight that every step of the way, and I will put out that fire before it starts. Let me know what you guys think. Hope you have a good one. I'll be back this afternoon with the Rush Hour podcast. You can scan that QR code if you want to listen early. That'll give you an early look. Please leave a comment. If there's any breaking news this weekend, I will be here to cover it. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoy what we got going on. Thanks for your grace and for your humanity. Have a good Friday, everybody.